One of my favourite royals, as many of you know, is this particular royal lady. That's right, Queen Mary. I think she was ahead of her time, you know, a little bit like Queen Victoria. In fact, maybe, I mean, this is controversial, isn't it, chums? But really, I think all the royal ladies had a better vision about what people wanted and expected from the monarchy. Queen Mary had a, rather unique backstory, and right through until her demise, more or less dressed, many would suggest, in still very much the Edwardian garb. She realised that this was the imagery that people liked her in, was expected to see her in, but behind the scenes she was a kind and caring lady who did a lot for hospital visiting late at night. No press, no paparazzi. She would go and see patients, particularly those recuperating from the Second World War, totally just because they needed company or they'd lost their family. There was a really kind side to Queen Mary. It's always nice though to find the other side about exactly how these people just, well, lifted other people's careers. As ever, let me explain. Morning, good to see you. Are you all right? I'm not so bad, thank you so much. And as ever, thank you for joining me. Thank you for all your support with the videos. It really means a lot, chums. And I do enjoy our nostalgia chats because we learn so much, don't we? I mean, I just, I was talking to someone the other day about do you remember, if you live in the United Kingdom, I bet you had this in your area, neck of the woods though, those sort of fake pop albums. Do you remember Top of the Pops? Weren't they great? When you couldn't afford all the singles, you could buy one for X amount of pennies from Woolworths. Who remembers Woolworths? Wasn't that lovely? The pick and mix, the sweets, and at the same time you could get a bag of nails. I mean, what more? What more did you need when you went shopping? And they had a lovely, affordable calf. Nothing like that now, is there? But the Top of the Pops albums really said a lot. And I, years later, working in the music industry, met a lot of the people who became famous who actually got their break singing on a lot of those. I know there's Embassy Records too from Woolworths. Oh, we'll be going there, don't worry. I wanted to highlight this particular story though for you, because when you look at sort of Royal Association, they say, don't they, like, I remember many years later, I was too young to remember this, but the brilliant comedian, the late comedian Freddie Starr, he stole I think it was the 1972 Royal Variety Performance, because he wasn't really that well known then. He was slightly madcap and slightly controversial to put on, a big royal show like that. But because it was televised overnight, Freddie Starr became a star. And I met him many years later working in Blackpool. Lovely man, troubled man, as most comedians are, but a lovely, kind soul, And when you think about it, what a great life. He made so many people laugh. One person, though, that really made Queen Mary laugh, and this was way back at the 1930 Royal Variety Performance. And it's interesting, you have to remember this, because although it's been going a few years now, they were still very nervous about comedians within the royal family, because, if a comedian said something a little bit blue, like the infamous Max Miller, then, it was kind of like, will the royals like it? It was still like looking at the royal box and going, off with your head, that type of thing, But the bottom line was Queen Mary had a very dark and funny sense of humour. And it was this particular man that she elevated into superstardom. But she didn't just leave it there. A wonderful comedian called Gillie Potter, he appeared there, and to give a sort of flavour of his act, many of us might remember somebody who was very similar, who may have borrowed his act a little bit later, in the equally brilliant Terry Thomas. Remember? He appeared in all those wonderful films like School for Scoundrels and It's a Mad World, and always had the moustache and the gap tooth, and it was just brilliant. Well, Gillie Potter was similar to that. He would come on stage, and he would very sort of, English and monocle and the top hat. I'm speaking to you in basic English, and he'd have the audience roaring with laughter. Different time, of course, but roaring with laughter because he was literally playing them back to them, right? The posh people. What was interesting, apparently Queen Mary absolutely demanded to meet him after the 1930 Royal Variety Performance, and she thought he was terrific, and he got offered also to appear at Windsor Castle and many private royal events. Now, fast forward a few years, right, and the BBC burgeoning television service. And what they really wanted was the Royal Seal of Approval. And the Royal Seal of Approval came from the fact that Queen Mary wouldn't mind the BBC having experimentals into, whatever. But the bottom line really was, well, she wouldn't mind seeing something of her favourite. And so because of that, Gillie Potter was able to start in one of the very first Alexandra Palace TV transmissions because of Queen Mary. And because of Queen Mary, they kept bringing him back. So when they took these sort of reruns and test things to the palace and said, what do you think? Because this is what they really did. You know, as long as she was seeing something that made her laugh, oh, I loved him. And that truly is how that particular man and his career were elevated. He became incredibly successful. Sadly, when he died, he was a good age and everything like that, but he had around, in our today's money, around about 55,000, so he was incredibly rich. And in his bill matter in many years later, he could say laughter by royal command. And apparently Queen Mary never bothered about that. Others, possibly, but not him. Fascinating to know, isn't it, how you get that royal seal of approval. Neil Sean, Kensington, London.